All right, welcome to the Legendary Upside YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a couple drafts with the newly launched Sidekick Sims beta. If you want to check this out and you're a Sidekick subscriber, head on over to the Leg Up Discord. Details, it's very easy to install, but basically we're kind of stress testing this right now. So kind of like not really multi-tabling is kind of the advice there, but you can check out the Sims for Best Ball Mania style drafts on both DraftKings and Underdog. What's up, guys? What's up? What's up? Happy Friday. This is fine since I just drafted the most ridiculous $3 roster of all time. You love to see that. Let's go ahead and jump into a Best Ball Mania. Let's do a 20-second Best Ball Mania. Hopefully that fills pretty quickly. Okay, it's gonna make me do the location check thing, I think. Let's see. All right, we should be good. Best Ball Mania, 22nd. All right, this is gonna fill in just a second, so that's perfect. We are in. Okay. Let's see. Sidekick up. And I'll make this a little smaller and zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Yeah. Did the little tiny one. So people can see. All right. Oh, I'm at a 12 hole. Okay. It's slightly unfortunate because I think one of the things about drafting the Sidekick that's kind of cool is if you're near a turn, you can kind of use the recommendations, but also add a little zest of trying to push stuff around the turn. But obviously, if you're sitting right at the turn, that element isn't there. But yeah, I'm going to try to IKB a little less than normal, just to kind of show off the new features that we have here. The Sidekick has now got realistic scoring outcomes for every player in the player pool, and so it can do more. It basically the recommendations are improved, and able to kind of account for team texture in ways that we weren't previously. So I'll try to stick with the recommendations a little more, just to kind of highlight what you're seeing with the tool, but talking through obviously what I'm seeing at all these picks. Any questions, throw them in the chat. Happy to answer anything. And yeah, let me know if the board's big enough and all that good stuff. Nothing really out of the ordinary so far. I actually kind of like the back half of the board this year. I think it's pretty sweet. It's sometimes funny how we're like, we love one part of the board and then it turns out maybe to be the opposite that ends up being like where all the winners are drafted. But it does feel likely to me that the back half of the board, somewhere from like 7 to 12, is going to be a pretty sweet spot to be drafting, because it feels like there's depth in the first round and then some guys that I really like in the early second as well. Nico Collins here. This is easy. You don't need Sims to know to take Nico Collins at 12. Big fan of that value. Brian Thomas. This is a great start. I'm a big fan of this start. Yeah, so easy. Generally, what we have found with this type of start is that with kind of all the math behind everything and basically the ability to not just intuit where players should be priced, with everything kind of shuffled around from previous seasons. What I'm talking about is wide receiver pricing really having risen in recent years, the last couple of years, running back prices being cheaper. Like, we've kind of been intuiting what to do and really not wanting to fall behind at receiver. What the Sims kind of seem to be pointing at is that that's true, but you don't need to capitulate to the extreme prices once you get down past the really high end receivers. So my guess is that we're going to be pretty balanced in terms of the recommendations coming in going forward because I have two awesome receivers to start with. So yeah, we might be like slightly too fearful of falling behind at receiver with a start like this. At least I was, is what I'm thinking. All right, check out any questions here. How's JGFC in every one of every streamer's drafts? It's a JGFC question. Do you always go with the common Nico BTJ combo? Do you pull up Garrett Wilson sometimes? I don't pull up Wilson. I pull up Bowers sometimes, and I don't think I would really pull up Wilson. If I was going to pull up anyone, kind of like surprising, it'd probably be two players. It would be Rice, who I think could end up going close to this, like in the lad range soon-ish. Or maybe not soonish, but by the end of the summer. And then McBride would be the other guy that it would be kind of interesting to have some McBride teams on this side of the board. I think both are really, really strong picks. But most of the time, I just take Brian Thomas Jr., who's an incredible pick at 13. And you don't always get Nico there. You can get Amon-Ra, you get Genty, you might get BTJ Bowers. So there's a fair amount of combos at the 12. So I don't find myself like I'm not like, oh, another Nico BTJ team. I'm psyched about everyone I have. I'm working on it. Wouldn't have been better to go Nico Lad since I think in the first round and early second round, the correlation couldn't be a tiebreaker, but I think that's beyond tiebreaker. If you have Lad like dead even with BTJ, that's one thing, but I don't. I think Brian Thomas Jr. Is kind of a tier above, but that's why I wouldn't do it. All right. So this is showing me Breece Hall and then one of these quarterbacks, that's what I want. I'm in sync here with the recommendations. Give me Breece, and then one of these elites is really nice. Okay. So Breece, come on down. And then yeah, I'm a big fan of Breece Hall at these prices. I think there's some coach speak that's kind of gotten taken. People have run with it, and it's like Breece is dead now, and I just don't buy it at all. I think Breece is actually set up quite well. All right, so Breece, Josh Allen, very, very fun start. The elite quarterbacks were something that I wasn't as into in the big board. And then in part is because I kind of wanted to hammer some values at wide receiver and running back there that I thought might not be there. But also, I just think I was sleeping on the elite quarterbacks a little bit. They have really high ceiling, and we have high confidence in who they are. It would be kind of shocking if Josh Allen wasn't one of the best quarterbacks at the end of this season. And so you get that certainty plus ceiling. And that's something that with the Sims, that was like a kind of very hard to miss. That it's like, hey, these elites are awesome picks in round 4. So definitely one of the lessons I think that we have so far. All right. Am I the only one terrified of Wilson's volume? I'm not terrified of Wilson's volume at all. In some ways, I'm terrified of him having so much volume and I didn't have enough. Like their whole offense, I think, is going to go through him. And I was reading today that they're like moving him around a lot. And they're trying to, creatively find ways to get him the ball, but not because he can't get open, but because he's like going to be the engine of their offense. And Fields has some issues as a quarterback, but he has like if you're looking for consistency week to week, Fields is not your guy. But Fields has provided a ceiling for DJ Moore. Like he had like a 50-point game with him. And last year we were very, very excited about Garrett Wilson. Rodgers isn't what we hoped. They bring in Devontae Adams. I think this year Wilson could get just an absurd target share. Just one of the most frequently targeted per route receivers in the entire league. So that's where I think that's where I think Wilson's like volume as far as like play volume doesn't concern me as much. I think he's had such a big target share, and I also don't think the Jets are going to be like the Steelers or anything. They'll be built around the run game, but I don't think to their detriment. Are you doing another draft? Yeah, I'm going to jump over to a DraftKings draft as well. JGFC is trying to stream all 150 of his drafts through other people's streams. How are you playing Chase starts? I'm mixing it up. I have a lot of McBride Chase. I take one of the running backs there fairly frequently, like Jonathan Taylor. I got this morning with Chase. I did Chase, Taylor, McBride. I do Chase Higgins sometimes, Chase Irving, Chase Jacobs, Chase Rice. So I really am mixing it up. I will take Burrow sometimes at the 4-5. Sometimes I'll push it. He almost never comes back, but that's okay. You don't have to have Burrow. Just got BTJ at 19 on DraftKings to pair with Bijan. Okay. When we go over to DraftKings, I'm hoping for that kind of luck. Oh my God. That's wild. All right. Going to be up here. Joe Mixon goes. And so we're looking at like Juwan Jennings and a running back here. Yeah, that sounds pretty great, actually, to me. Juwan Jennings, nice wide receiver 3, I would say. Grab him. And then, I love that. I love that. Travion actually flips Henderson there. Very happy to take Travion. Not Travion flips Henderson flips Walker. Walker, obviously a good pick too. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Travion Henderson on this team. Who knows what we'll do at quarterback later, but it does create another out for a stack there. We're pretty sweet in terms of thinking about quarterback too, right? You got Fields, May, Stroud, Lawrence, Purdy. So lots of outs, lots of optionality here. As I said, I figured this would be, fairly balanced, but I actually did have Juwan Jennings as the third wide receiver through 5. So we're like on track structurally, kind of by the traditional, measuring sticks, but also get the RB1, elite quarterback, grab RB2. The funny thing is sometimes if you're just following the top recommendation, it will get you extreme in one direction or the other. Extreme 0 running back or more typically like an extreme hero running back build. You'll also see some like 1 wide receiver through 5 type of stuff. And then you're kind of tacking on some rookies, tacking on some maybe like an Ayuk type, some guys with upside late. And then you'll end up with, some Wandales and Josh Palmers and that type of thing. But typically with those teams, you're seeing that the running back room has a lot of early firepower without, a million guys. So you're going to probably stop at 4 or 5 running backs, maybe 6, but probably 5. And you're just like going to dominate the flex with the running back. And typically on those teams as well, you've got like an elite tight end and an elite quarterback. So one of the things that with the Sims I think is most interesting is that it's probably going to allow us to take some paths that we just weren't messing with before because they're easy to screw up. But there are some viable versions of those types of builds that, we can maybe start to touch a little bit more. This one very traditional, which I'm comfortable with, but there is some more uncomfortable stuff kind of potentially available. Thank you to I'm a loser till I win the Millie. Nice to hear. Didn't the coach say he was in a committee instead of a workhorse? I assume this is Brees. Yeah, they've talked about how they're going to use all their backs, and that they like all their backs. They're all going to get touches, but there's also been other indications that Brees that they're. First of all, if you think about like leaving aside what the coach has said, if what they're telling you is that Brees is going to be in direct competition with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, which as a Brees backer, I want them to have this room be done. Don't bring anyone else in. Let Brees compete with those two because he's going to whip some ass. If that's the competition, it's Brees. Brees is going to win. They're talking about using the guys. They're also talking about how they're really liking Brees's speed. He's had looked good in minicamp. They did mention Braylon Allen's speed as well, which I'm a little skeptical of. Wouldn't run a 40, Braylon Allen. Not very explosive last year, but yeah, they're talking up using all three guys. They're also talking up running the ball a lot, and that being really important to their identity. So it kind of, for me, it comes back to the prior on Brees with me, which is that he's like by far the most talented guy, and if they're going to run the ball, I think he's going to get a lot of work. All right, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, both of these guys make a ton of sense for this team. We can go with Pollard. Seems fine. And then I'm guessing we get a receiver here. No. Okay, so Swift comes up. So this is like where I would not go running back. I would go receiver. Just in like that's the way I tend to build. But let's do it. Let's take the running back and see what happens. This is the the Artillery Frost chaperone concept. Another thing with the Sims recommendations, they tend to be more like they're very responsible. It's like, yes, we're all going out tonight, but we're going to bring a couple chaperones. There's not just going to be, you're not putting it all on Tony Pollard to keep these rookies in line. We're gonna we're gonna bring DeAndre Swift along too. So it's a a better child to caretaker ratio is what the Sims recommend. So we're clearly looking pretty strong at running back at this point. Only 3 receivers through 8 now. So this is like, starting to get a little out of structure compared to traditional rules of thumb. But at the same time, as I mentioned at the top, I kind of thought we might see a little bit of this because of the Nico Brian Thomas Jr. start being super strong and stronger than you could typically expect last year or really this year outside of like the 12, maybe the 8, 9, 10. You might be able to get something like this, but typically you're not going to be this strong at receiver. So it unlocks maybe a little more flexibility than we were thinking. Yeah, this is my take about Brees as well. Are you concerned about the Brees dip in his play last season? Yeah, it's not ideal. He was still very effective as a receiver. The explosiveness was not as good as last year or the year before, and his success rate was really low, which is a concern for sure. If you look at like Braylon Allen's stuff, though, he's much worse. So I think it's partly related to the offense, and then partly you are betting on a bounce back from Brees. But he's young, very talented, high pedigree. We've seen him be very efficient as a rookie, and then very efficient coming back from a torn ACL. It's not without risk. It's definitely not without risk. Wilson's going to get spammed. Yeah, that's what I'm feeling too. Zach thinks they're scouting their own offensive lineman for the wide receiver too on the Jets. That's not far off. Appreciate this, Josh. I don't see how Wilson fails with volume this year. Mason will be the number 2 in pass targets too. Yeah, Mason's in a decent spot for that. They are talking about like Ruckert a little bit as improving, but Mason they basically have said is as advertised. So that's very good for him. Higbee versus Ferguson. I'm on an island thinking Higbee seems like a great value. I'd be on team. I don't really want to mess with it, but if you made me pick, I would, and I don't really even want to say this, but I would pick Higbee. Ferguson, I think, is probably like their Higbee succession plan. And the reason I think that is because that's what they've said. So yeah, I think Higbee probably is going to get more run this year. I don't really want to take him though. All right. So this is pointing us to another running back. And then Keon Coleman goes. So all right, we can do it. Travis Etienne. We're chaperoning the hell out of this team. I would probably IKB to toot and have a little more fun, but it's fine. And then Trevor Lawrence pops up. I am you're not gonna. No, we're not doing Lawrence. We're doing May. So Lawrence comes up, and in all honesty, we can probably get Lawrence with the next pick. So we're doing May. The first IKB is Drake May, but we've got Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence. So you can see why he's there. The reason he would be there is that it's like he's actually the best pick for this team. You have Brian Thomas Jr., you have Travis Etienne. Just go ahead and get Lawrence, which makes sense. Still not doing it. Still not doing it. We might get Lawrence later on. We'll see. Receiver is both a need and something that it's like there's not really any guys here. So what are you going to do? It's kind of like you can't force what's not there. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see where receivers start getting recommended again. All right. You can always get May, baby. Do you think the Cardinals could support 2 elite pass catchers? One of the reasons I've been out on McBride is because I think Marvin Harrison Jr. takes the leap. So I'd rather just go running back, wide receiver than elite tight end there. The thing with I hear what you're saying. I mean, Kyler is not someone we've typically wanted to bet on to support 2 elite guys. It is helpful that McBride is a tight end. So, what he needs to do in terms of yardage and receptions is a little bit lower. You do also have the fact he didn't score any touchdowns last year. And, that he's due for regression there just based on his targets, how much work he was seeing. So you could have him get there, more on some touchdown regression. And then, Marvin Harrison Jr. taking a leap is kind of bad for him. But that might not happen. And you look at like McBride compared to the receivers he's going around in terms of like what he actually did last year. He's outscoring these dudes. He's now had 2 years of over 2 yards per route run, super efficient. When we see this like young tight end break out and then break out again, that's not a profile that I want to really overthink. If you're going to get that type of profile in like the second or third round, late second, early third, I think we want to be in on that in a pretty big way. It's not that it can't fail, and Marvin Harrison Jr. taking a leap, could be the reason why it does fail. But I mean, I think it's entirely possible that he's just the guy. He's the engine of the offense. He's probably the number one option. All right, Sack. This was supposed to be a DM Sack. All right, let's look at this. So we're looking at Dalton Kincaid here. Sure. Seems good. And then we're probably going to take J.K. Dobbins. Oh, Ramondre Stevenson. Oh, we're doubling up. We're doubling up on Patriots running backs. Okay. Let's do it. All right. Now I think we're going to get a little more serious about receiver. Tight end we still have a need for, but you see the recommendations are starting to flip over. So this is like as weak at receiver as, we're pushing it here. We're pushing it. But we got the Collins, Thomas, Jennings start. So we're basically trying to win the flex with running back. And we've got an elite quarterback stacked up with the tight end. So wide receiver 3 is not how this team wins, but the win condition, I think, identified as running back here pretty clearly. And we're betting on the Patriots, which I am comfortable with. We're also betting on the Bills. So we'll see how we land the plane here at receiver. Just started peppering in Isaiah Davis as my last round pick. Looked way better than Allen. I think Braylon Allen is a very, very dangerous pick. That's more how I'm thinking about the Isaiah Davis stuff, is that I'm scared of Braylon Allen. The Sim Chaperone had a personality to be Eckler. That's correct. Sorry about the highlighted comment. Taking up the board. Okay. Yeah, Zach. I like this take quite a bit as someone who's in on Brees, but yeah, Braylon Allen. Remember when Irv Smith was kind of like the guy everyone loved, and it's like, why do we love Irv Smith? And it's like because he was once young. He was 21 when he entered the draft. It's like, but hasn't he been in the league 4 years? Yeah, yeah. But he once was young. I think we're doing that in 3 years. It's like, Braylon Allen. He entered the league at like 19. All right. It is a little sad that we didn't get Trevor, I will say. Brian Thomas, Trevor Etienne. But we did also double up the Patriots backfield, so I feel good about it. All right. Let's Miles Sanders in every draft. I mean, dude, he's getting reps with the one, and I got him at the 18-12 today. 18-12. The last pick in the draft. I don't want to like Miles Sanders. That's not fun. But he's literally repping with the ones, and his competition is Javonte Williams. And it's like, hey, with your final pick, a $1 pick, do you want to take the guy who like might end up starting for the Cowboys? Like, okay. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like that I have to do it, but I'm willing to do it. All right. So we got Palmer, Henry, Douglas. So here come the receivers here with a little bit. We kind of punted the depth, right? Punted wide receiver playing in the flex. That's not happening on this team, but it is now time to make sure that we do have some depth at least to help fill that wide receiver 3 spot. Palmer, sure, great. Past ADP, stacks with Allen. Kind of like the exact type of guy you want on a team like this, I would say. And then Wandale, I'm going to IKB to Douglas, actually. Maybe I can get Douglas later. Let's do Wandale. Don't snipe me on Douglas. He's not even good. It's only because May. That's the only reason I want him. We'll do Wandale. We'll follow the Sidekick's advice there. Okay, so now we're up to 5 receivers. Palmer and Wandale help fill out like guys who play receiver so that we're not punting the wide receiver 3 spot, but we're really counting on Collins, Thomas, and Jennings to fill those spots. When they don't, these dudes with jobs kind of help fill in. Tight end 2 now becomes more of a priority than wide receiver 6. Makes sense. Tight end is about to have a bit of a tier break. We're going to have, after I would say like Ertz, Gesicki, there's like a kind of a tier break to Otten, Taylor, Schultz, Okonkwo. So getting a second guy from this group would be definitely preferable. And we'll need a little bit of help from the room to get one of those guys, but certainly possible. Let's see here. All right. Can we get a team review at the 101? I don't like going Hampton Najee, but felt like it was needed with what was on the board. Sure. So Chase, McBride, Harrison, cool. So you did the double up, which I'm fine with. It's not something I do all the time, but I think it's fine. Hampton, Hurts, that's a very fun turn there. Montgomery, Myers, so wide receiver 3, Myers, totally fine. Murray, which makes sense. Get that double stack. Cooper Kupp, Najee Harris. I think this is fine. I think the Najee Hampton thing is fine for this team. And then you get Jaden Blue, Michael Wilson, Rico Dowdle. Yeah, I think you have like quarterback super covered. You get the double stack with the elite tight end. Receiver is like obviously with Chase, it's never going to be weak. It's not like a super strength, but it's good. And you kind of use the Chargers double up to make sure that you have kind of like one of the 2 running back spots covered for the entire season, which seems fine to me. Yeah, pretty solid. All right, so the tight end's starting to go off the board. Gesicki, Otten still looking like good options. Noel, Douglas is still there. That's cool. That'd be a nice addition. So yeah, tight end, one receiver is probably going to be what I see here at the top, but we'll see. A lot of tape on Marvin Harrison Jr. being open, but Kyler kind of stinks at times. So I think that's more of a Kyler problem. I think it is partly a Kyler problem. I think it was a little bit of the coaching problem. They didn't like use him in creative ways enough, in my opinion. Noel goes and Keenan Allen goes. Let's go ahead and take Gesicki. That's kind of nice. I think that's a good tight end 2 here. It's possible the next recommendation is also a tight end. I hope it's Douglas because that's what I want to take. Yeah. And so far, I've just been clicking the top guy in this draft. Douglas here is beautiful. That is exactly what I would be doing. As you guys saw, I almost took him in the last turn, but pushing him made more sense given his ADP. And we're rewarded. Look at that. So this is where I think if you're looking at what the Sims are kind of pushing us towards structurally, it's more of take what's there when it's there. Take things you're not going to be able to get later rather than trying to satisfy rules of thumb. That's like probably one of the biggest things that I'm seeing drafting with them. Again, you can check this out, legendaryupside.com/sidekick. If you already have the Sidekick, head on over to the Discord. Zach posted a message there with instructions on setting up the beta. It's very, very simple to do. And you like literally drag a file onto the Firefox browser. It could not be simpler. But anyway, you see here, like, get the kind of the first running back here, and then hammer 4 running backs, actually get a 6th running back, and that's like, all right, we'll take care of the receiver depth and tight end depth at the end. Whereas like in the past, and frankly, just drafting myself, I probably do a Buka. Personally, like I would have taken a Buka over Swift. That's like how I'm more comfortable drafting. And then like I'll figure out, some of the running back depth a little later. I probably would have taken Tootin over ETN because that's more fun. But this team looks pretty good to me. So, there's more than one good pick at every point in the draft, like almost certainly. So it's not like, oh, this is the correct pick. You got to do this. But I do think it's interesting to see some of these structures. That's why I wanted to just kind of go with the top recommendation in this draft. Is just like, here's the structures that don't feel as comfortable, but they're like very sound as well. There's nothing about this that's like, oh my God, what are you doing? You get 5 running backs through 9, but your first is until round 3 and your second is until round 6. Tack on a 6th and the 12th, and then it's tight end, receiver. We may end up going 7 with a Miles Sanders, who just should not be there as a guy getting reps with the ones on a solid offense, but we'll see. 3rd tight end is the priority. Is Swift a smash now that Dobbins got signed? It's hard to get away from the fact that Swift is a good pick. And I've tried to get away from it. But it's good. He's a good pick. May, Kyle Williams, Hunter. Kay, I highly recommend subscribing to Leg Up. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love Leg Up. We're big fans of May. All right. Did the Sidekick just decide that you never do this, so you should? I don't follow. The Sidekick is I think helping to highlight some paths that we that I would not do on my own, if that's what you're saying. 2631, what is going on? Yeah, I love it. Are you still drafting Adam Thielen? Not a ton. I'm like slightly nervous for Thielen that Hunter Renfrow is getting a little love. You know, Thielen's obviously pretty fragile. All right. I don't want to like Miles Sanders, but I refuse to like Javonte Williams in the 120s. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm totally with you. All right. Theo Johnson here. And then probably AD Mitchell to close us out. Let's do it. Yeah, once the third quarterback, I'm going to do my boy AD Mitchell. I'm going to IKB off that. What it doesn't know is that Drake May is the fucking truth. So we don't need the third quarterback here. But third quarterback is another, even with an elite, you tend to see that more than I would have expected. But like, it's because Sam Darnold's literally like 20 plus picks past ADP, and he helps cover a bye week. You know, you deal with an injury, one of your quarterbacks at one point. He gives you a week 15 spike week, and it's massively plus EV. So that's why you are seeing Darnold there, because he's kind of like free points compared to some of these guys that might be nothing. And that's probably like just the market mispricing some of these, like the Darnolds of the world probably just should never be completely free. And when they are, it makes sense to add them as quarterback threes more than you would think. I'm pretty excited about AD Mitchell, though. Lots of positive buzz on him. So grab the wide receiver 7. The other thing I would note is that as you get to the end of the draft, you do start to see things bounce around a little bit more in terms of the recommendations. There's like rarely a guy at the very end of a draft who's like, yeah, I gotta take him because he's in the 18th round. Right? If you had to take him, you would have taken him already. So that's like, if I am IKBing, that's where I'm most comfortable doing that, other than taking Drake May or Trevor Lawrence. But that's the team. So I followed the top recommendations pretty closely there, except when it tried to get me to not take Drake May, and didn't take the third quarterback, took AD Mitchell. But I think otherwise I kind of just followed straight up, and it's an interesting team. Get the 2 receivers to start. Get Juwan Jennings as the wide receiver 3. That creates flexibility to push receiver and just grab 4 more at the very end. Grab the 2 tight ends at the very end to go with Dalton Kincaid for a 3 tight end build. Josh Allen, Drake May. And then you get Breece Hall, Travion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson. So you have the Patriots backfield. And you've got the bring back on Breece. Drake's on a plane. Got that week 17 game set up. DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Travis Etienne. So some veteran running back production. The late season hammer in Travion Henderson, hopefully. Going to be filling the flex with a running back almost certainly, like probably most of, if not all, the season. But we have the horses to do that, and didn't overspend, right? Did 6 running backs here, but second running back only coming in round 6. So kind of a hero running back build-ish. And Josh Allen also stacked with Dalton Kincaid and Josh Palmer. Pretty fun. All right, let's head over to DraftKings, and we'll do one there. Let's see. Best ball. Do the $20 one. Got myself a ticket here. We'll use that. Okay, and we're in. Not live yet. Let's see how fast this is filling. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Okay. Do you ever think you put too much weight into not drafting a guy because they are rising in ADP? I tend not to fade a guy when they're rising. Risers tend to rise. You know what I mean? Like if a guy's rising, they tend to rise for a while. Ideally, you identify guys you think are gonna rise, and then you can pepper them in a little bit more. I'm a little worried about your receivers. Yeah, the receivers we did push there. Miles Sanders is this year's Chase Brown. Only Jerry Jones is evil enough. Yeah, this I got to go to the contest. Let's do that and draft. All right. Only from the corners here. Only from the corners. Makes it easier to just show the sidekick, I suppose. All right. Is it a revelation from The Sims that we've kind of been overvaluing drafting on-slot wide receiver builds? I wouldn't say that we haven't been overvaluing that in the sense that those builds don't work. I think we've been overemphasizing those builds as like in the group of builds that do work. We're talking about those builds like too much because those builds do work, but they're not the only builds that work. And if we're only using certain builds that are plus EV and ignoring other builds that are plus EV, we're like limiting the types of teams that we can build. And we're also putting ourselves a little bit at the mercy of a certain group of players when we only do a certain build. So if you can find more builds that work, then you can draft bigger groups of players because you're actually and more combos of players, right? Because it's like, well, I already have 2 running backs and I only have 3 receivers, so I have to take a receiver here. It's like, no, you could take Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift, here. Like that also works. So yeah, I think we've been overemphasizing it. But I wouldn't say I don't want the idea to be like don't do on-slot wide receiver builds because I do think they work. Some of the stuff we're finding is like, oh yeah, that thing we thought works. But we're also finding stuff where it's like, what? That works? Okay. Let's try that out. All right. Yeah. One thing I would say too about the RB heavy teams is that so the way the sidekick is working is it's looking at what is available later as well. And what I think might happen when we get to August, it's not that like all of a sudden running back heavier builds are out and wide receiver heavy builds are in, but it's like I think there might be a little bit of a shift. This is just a theory. I don't know. This is, we just created this, so I don't know. But my theory is that we might see a bit of a shift toward wide receiver when we get later and the late rounds become more of a priority to get running backs. We know with more certainty which running backs to target. And that then leads to, more like because we want those running backs later and there's good running backs later, the running backs kind of more in that like Ramondre zone become less of a priority. Ramondre Etienne zone, right? Become less of a priority. We're also probably going to get better news about how good of a pick is Ramondre. Like, is Ramondre like going to open as the number 2, or is he like going to be kind of the 1A to start the season, in which case he would rise? Or if he's the number 2, we're really not that excited about him at that price where he's going now. Same with Etienne. So some of these ambiguous backfields start to shake out. We start to have like more winners and losers in that range. And so that range becomes a little less exciting. I'm talking like kind of the 120s ish at running back. And then the other thing that might happen is that some of these running backs who are available in kind of the 5, 6, 7 range might rise. So I would not be surprised at all if by the, second, third week of August, DeAndre Swift is more of like, in kind of the late 6th round. And so you're not seeing him at the 7, 8 turn on Underdog. And yeah, so I think that we should remember that it is June and the particular player pool and the prices that we're getting in combination with each other are going to shift. And I think that will actually change the structures, the textures of teams that, if you're just kind of following the top recommendation that you would find yourself on. looks like value picks, but also really undesirable picks for most people. Yeah, I think that yeah, I mean, especially on Underdog too, which some of the less sexy picks are showing up as values, which, at a certain point when you have guys fall enough, I am willing to get on board with that. I was a big Rico Dowdle guy last year. I'm willing to take the underpriced, unsexy names at a point. Um, yeah, running back depth gets so thin, and it feels like there's a lot of late round dart throws at wide receiver and tight end. I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. That's what's true right now. And so it kind of makes sense to mix in builds where you attack that. Shouldn't be everything, but I think it's good to have builds that attack that dynamic because that dynamic probably changes as we go on. All right. So Chase, and it's funny because I was getting questions about how I build with Chase. I mentioned um, builds with McBride and Taylor, and that I will take T. Let's go ahead and take T. Follow the sidekick recommendation there. And I'm guessing Jacobs comes up to the top, but Harrison also a solid pick. Garrett Wilson a solid pick. Lots of these guys, very strong picks here. And Harrison stays at the top. Sure. Bring back. We're doing the Call of Duty here. We got T. Higgins, we got Harrison, we got Chase. So already heavy into this game. I'm already anticipating that we will be sniped by the drafter out of the 2-hole on Kyler Murray because he's got Trey McBride. But we'll see. Maybe he ends up with Hurts with Saquon, and that keeps us safe here. All right. Thoughts on the 10-hole? Sorry that I didn't see that in time. Ton of late wide receiver and tight end value towards the end. Yeah. It's not as sexy, but it's a way to build right now. CMC, the 101 or 102. This is like we've had a bunch of discussion about CMC recently because the ceiling is so high, right? If he's CMC, the ceiling is just ridiculous. But at the same time, he is a fairly risky first round pick. So trying to gauge exactly where to take him is difficult. I want Puka over him still. Puka's so locked in because if Puka's Puka, you're just like, yeah, yes, I want I want him. You obviously, if CMC, he's going to outscore Puka and be more valuable, but there's no reason to think Puka's not just going to be Puka, where CMC is a 29-year-old running back who missed almost all of last season, was ineffective when he played because of like Achilles tendonitis, right? There's some downside. So, but after Puka goes, that's where I'm starting to, I was like a little torn there. Kind of wanted to take, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Nico. But at this point, I kind of am taking CMC. Just I think this ceiling's so high. Yeah, Renfro's getting a ton of buzz. It's kind of wild. Have you noticed anything with the amount of rookies on a team or specific position group? I would say that the Sims rarely ever get as rookie heavy as I sometimes do, which means they care more about advance rate than I probably do, which is probably correct. It's probably mathematically correct to care a little bit more about advance rate than I have in the past. But it's also like the goal is to win the tournament, and you can only advance from round one once. You don't get points for advancing harder. So late season upside is like very much prioritized at the same time. All right, so Ivan the Dark is grading my team, and says it was good. Weird team, but good. Weird team, but good is kind of like what the Sims are for sometimes. Not always, but we're trying to unlock weird team, but good. So good. We unlocked it. Joe Burrow here, Joe Mixon, Chuba Hubbard, Devontae Smith, RJ Harvey. Happy with any of these picks? Um, yeah, I'm gonna end up feeling pretty good about this turn, I think. Jalen Hurts goes. Got the Burrow double tap here. That seems good. Let's do that. Joe Mixon has been going earlier on DraftKings, and has fallen a little bit, but still pretty close to Chuba. I prefer Chuba at this point. So we get the new set of Sims here on this turn, and Chuba flips. They're very close, but I do prefer Chuba. It's the RB1 here. Chuba was really efficient last year. Canales was talking him up. Is like just a important leader for them. ETN is like nowhere to be seen. There was a quote today where Canales was talking up Raheem Blackshear and was like, ETN, has some work to do. That's okay. But I think it's going to be like Chuba and Dowdle, with Chuba as the one. So I do like him. All right, let's see. Let me pull the sidekick over to this side so you can see my side of the board a little bit better. I'll make it a little smaller. All right. Remember the time Hunter Renfrow was a top 10 receiver? Yeah, he was pretty good. He was pretty good. That was like 2021, I think. And then he got drafted in like the 6th, 7th round the following year. Solid backs, like how it turned out. This is from my previous team. Yeah, good at running back. Thoughts on AJ Brown this year? I mean, there's a lot of upside with Brown, right? It's not the most fun click. I like taking Lad a little bit more because it's so much easier to see the target volume. But AJ Brown is awesome. He's awesome, and no signs of him slowing down. If the Eagles had to pass a bit more this year, he could have an incredible season. That's probably not going to happen, but it could happen within like a range of the season. There might be something, they'd suffer some defensive injuries, or Barkley is like banged up, or they're pushed. They run into some really good offenses like the Bills in Week 17, and they actually have to throw. So I do. He's not as fun as some of the guys around him, but I do not want to be fading AJ Brown. Do you ever do any salary cap auction drafts? I love auction drafts, like redraft. Like I have done them. I haven't done one in a couple years. They're very fun. They're very, very fun. I was last time I did one, I was a bit out of practice, and I didn't like properly account for the amount of money being drained out of the room. And so I was like still bidding at the prices that I thought, oh, this is a good deal. But with an auction, you have to be like, well, this guy went for $70 and you thought he should go for like 61. So, and then that happened like 2 more times. And so there's less money in the room. So you don't bid as much as you would have before. So I was a bit rusty and I didn't crush it. But I would like to do another auction this year. That'd be fun. They're very fun. All right. So this is David Montgomery looking like going to be the top recommendation is my running back 2. Cool. Chris Olave. Cool. Very good turn, in my opinion, to get those 2 on this build. This is 3 receivers plus Burrow plus Hubbard. David Montgomery, who's the top guy by ADP. So scooping the value here. Need the running back. Pretty easy selection. I could see potentially Caleb flipping Olave here. Oh, DeAndre Swift jumps up. Sure. Let's do it. DeAndre Swift goes earlier on DraftKings because it's PPR. So grabbing the three receivers early, get the quarterback to stack, and then you end up going with DeAndre Swift. And skipping Olave. I'd probably take Olave there if I'm not trying to show the recommendations coming in on the Sidekick a little bit more clearly. But Swift's rated ADP on a PPR site is my running back 3 after 3 wide receiver starts. That would be another example of like maybe being slightly more balanced through this range at these prices. I don't know where the context on this was, but I enjoy it. Wix was a turd sandwich, nothing more. Seems like zero running back originated in full PPR and managed, and it bled over into half-point PPR best ball, which is less viable. Not impossible, but a Brees or even a Kenneth Walker makes life much easier. What I would say to that is the zero running back was crushing on that PPR site, and then the prices have risen dramatically to reflect how valuable wide receivers still are in half PPR and still in best ball. Zero running back has been very successful on Underdog. It was kind of the nuts in the in 2020 the 2022 season, and still pretty potent in 2023. 2024, not so much. But depending on the way you built, it was okay. It's just that the prices on the receivers rose so dramatically it became kind of difficult and harder to justify going zero running back. And we're dealing this year with similar prices to last year. So it really is about taking advantage of the way these players are priced, which is dramatically different than the way they used to be priced in either redraft or best ball. And so people valuing receiver more has kind of made it harder to just start receiver because more receivers are off the board by the time you pick again. And then there's better running back value. So I actually think that it's not so much about the scoring or about managed versus best ball. It's just about the prices. The prices have changed, and that's changed the way that you can draft. You can still do zero running back, I think. This is maybe not like true zero running back, but I didn't take my first running back until the 5th. So, it's close, but that's kind of more where I'm at. Like I'm probably by round 5, I'm probably taking one running back in most of my drafts. Not always though, even at these prices. Origin of the DK handle. My dad went to UNC. I went to Delaware and Blue Hen, so it's like UNC Blue Hen. I would like to change it. It's old. I've jumped on DraftKings years ago, so yeah, I would change it if I could. Rashi Rice is now a second round pick in DK on most rooms. 1-2 turn pick in August. I don't know if he'll get that high, but I could see him being pretty high. And he was the guy I was talking about before. I would consider pulling him up if you were going to do something weird like that, because I could see kind of having like he might really be worth that pick, and you could be one of the few teams during this time of the year that has him there, which is kind of interesting to me. Okay, so we're gonna be on the clock here in a second. Michael Pittman goes. Getting sniped on Michael Pittman is painful because it's Michael Pittman and I shouldn't be sniped on him. I shouldn't care, and yet I do. So Jalen Warren here, Jonnu Smith, Jordan Mason. I love Jalen Warren. That makes me happy. Let's go ahead and take him. And so this team right now does not have a tight end. We're Joe Burrow, Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Marvin Harrison. Bo Nix actually jumps to the top here. Bo Nix is pretty backstackable. He's the top guy by ADP value. I'm now like pretty solid at running back. Receiver, it's again kind of to the don't force it zone. Sort of a luxury pick type of thing, I would say. It's like you could take your second quarterback. You could take your first tight end, but nothing here that you like have to do. And so the falling Bo Nix, sure. Another thing I wouldn't like normally do myself, I probably take Kyler there with Harrison. But whatever. Nix is backstackable. and not just with like Franklin and Ingram and Pat Bryant, but you also have J.K. Dobbins now opening that up. So we'll see if Ingram can come back. Probably not, but it's possible. And tons of his receiver dart throws available. Again, I probably would take, I would have taken Kyler probably, or pull up one of these running backs like a Scattaboo. That's like more where my head is at typically. But we already have 4 running backs. So that'd be running back 5. Jonnu would have been fine there too. And so one thing I'll say about the Sims as well is that you're looking at a subset of the Sim seasons. And so you're going to get in, not everyone would see the same recommendation in every spot. So sometimes I'm asked like, oh, you IKB there, you IKB there. Like, yeah, I'm down to IKB. I'm not going to get crazy typically, but there's multiple good picks at most picks or almost every pick. You could say every pick, I think. There's multiple good picks at every pick. But yeah, this is kind of interesting. We'll see how this works out here with Nix here as the quarterback 2 instead of a Kyler with Marvin Harrison. Could be fun. Could be kind of stacked up later. Harrison goes to the Hurts team. He has Trey McBride. So east of Ethan probably feeling pretty good about the Knicks recommendation. So far, started 3 receivers, grab Burrow, 4 running backs, grab the quarterback 2. And recommendations now are running back and tight end, and then Luther Burden. We'll see if Burden makes it. He is very fun. Drake May still popping up, so everything's working good internally. Don't need to message the devs. We'll see how this works out. All right. Yeah, so thank you, Alex, who shouts out Pete and me streaming. Bit bummed that we couldn't do ship chasing yesterday. The bit we were going to draft. I'm hoping we do this next week now. But we had a draft plan. We were going to take every NFL head coach plus Roger Goodell and then draft 11-person offenses. Actually, 11-person teams. They were going to have to play both ways. So we're going to draft the coaches as players, draft them, and at the end you declare, where everyone's playing for you. And I think there's a pretty clear-cut 101, like a clear-cut 101. But there's a clear tier 1 as well. There's 3 coaches, I think, that if you're trying to build an actual NFL team, should be the top 3 picks. Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on that. All right, so Bashal Tootin, Tyler Warren, Luther Burden popping up here. All of those are good picks. Personally, I'm probably going Tootin Burden, and Burden goes. But Tootin, super fun RB5 on this type of team, right? Chuba, Montgomery, Swift, Warren. So where's the late season firepower? Where's the dreams of this team in week 17? Now it's with Bashal Tootin. We got the upside there. Ramondre. So we're going with a little bit more running back firepower than I would typically go with on this build, but we didn't have a running back till round 5. Let's do it and see how the recommendations come in after that. Pushing tight end and pushing that wide receiver 4. But all right, we're looking at Luther Burden potentially coming back at 120. That's a smash. He was in the top 3 there. I'm guessing he would have been the guy after Tootin, but we'll see. We won't see. We'll never know. But Burden goes here, and then it's like, well, that was it. Burden was the guy. You can't make a new guy. You can't make Burden be there. So let's just pivot. And we now have 6 running backs through 11 rounds, but the first running back was in round 5. So this is, very much kind of using zero running back principles. It's a little bit heavier at the running back position than I've tended to go. But wide receiver pricing has really not been like this outside of the last 2 seasons. So it makes sense in some ways why you would prioritize the running backs here with receivers really flying off the board, unlike the way they have in the past. Burden being the example. Burden is such a fun pick. I probably would have IKB'd even if it was Stevenson over Burden, but I don't feel like forcing Shaheed or Christian Kirk or who else? Hollywood Brown, Marvin Mims. Yeah, I think it's at that point, you either fill out running back or get your tight end 1. Also here, the Warren pick, Pittman, would have been a pick there. Olave, I probably IKB from Swift to Olave. And I think that's, he was the second guy in the Sidekick. So nothing crazy at all. Just kind of what you want the textures to look like. I think it's interesting, though, to have some builds like this. What are your thoughts on the quarterback values on DK? My thoughts on DK quarterbacks is that you kind of want to protect yourself. If you push quarterback too far, you can really get boxed out. You can like straight up ruin a team on DraftKings by pushing quarterback too far. So grabbing Knicks here or Kyler does make a lot of sense to me. Just like get that quarterback. Like it actually gives you flexibility to just like not need to chase quarterback. Not every room's like this, but sometimes on DraftKings, people just like go nuts at quarterback. This room is very responsible. No one's going nuts. No one's taking like 4 quarterbacks, but you will see that. You'll see people just like take 4 quarterbacks fairly early on and then creates this run and, everyone's scrambling. So you just want to be aware of what your room is doing at quarterback. I've been hammering Keaton Mitchell. That's an interesting one. The Harbaugh talked him up the other day, saying he looked much better. Yeah. Thank you, Eric, to mention that the Sims will be part of the playoff best ball product as well, which they weren't last year, but interesting that the Sims having take Hurts, but then pass on Devonta. Yeah, the Sims are like a less into stacking in terms of like, it's not that they don't like it, but it's not. We break like I think I'm like always breaking the tie to that. That would be similar to the Kyler Nix thing. We're like always taking Kyler there, but you probably shouldn't always take Kyler there. You certainly can, and you certainly can take Smith there, but it's not like it doesn't become necessary. All right, so Kraft, Strange, Freiermuth, Dobbins goes, which is a bit of a bummer. Although I kind of boxed myself out there a bit. Kraft, sure, tight end 1, need it. Let's get that taken care of. And then looking at Ray Davis, I guess I haven't boxed myself out. So the Sims are going hard at running back here, having not taken a running back through the first 4 rounds. Let's follow it and see where it goes. Ray Davis, come on down. So Ray Davis there, pretty much at ADP. 7th running back, 3 receivers. We are getting loose at receiver. So this was similar though, right? The previous drafts we had 3 receivers through 13 or something. And then this draft, we're now through 12 rounds, have 3 receivers. But they're our first 3 picks. Get 2 quarterbacks, 1 tight end, and 7 running backs. So another draft where it's like you're taking the value where it is. We don't really like Marvin Mims that much. He's stacked with Knicks. We don't really think he's a target. We don't really think Legette's a target. We don't really think Hollywood's a target. Kyle Williams, sure, if he was at 144, but he wasn't. Jack Besh is running with the twos right now. Looks like Deontay Thornton is the rookie receiver that's with the ones at the moment. I'm not completely out on Besh, but he's certainly not like a screaming target. So yeah, it's really, since Burden has gone, Kyle Williams is the only other receiver that I would be like have been happy to get. At the turn we just did, though, not at the previous turn. So we'll see. It's going to end up being in some ways similar builds. Although in this case, rather than running back 2 being in the 6th round, well, running back 2 was in the 6th round, but running back 1 was in the 5th round instead of the 3rd. But you can see the recommendations now are tight ends and receivers like all the way down until you get to Cam Ward as a potential quarterback 3. So we'll see. All right, I'm going to jump to the bottom here. Yeah, no receivers after the first 3. 20th round Mostert is one that I've been thinking about recently. The issue with Mostert is that he's so old, and then they talked him. So they were talking him up as the running back 2 there, and kind of like, oh, we're going to use both guys and all that stuff, like stuff you'd want to hear if you're into Mostert. But then they were also mentioning like how Zamir White has had an awesome offseason, and Sincere McCormick has looked really good. I just don't know like how much Mostert has left in the tank. So when we get to the end of the season, like, are you really, do you have contingent value in Mostert? Has he lost the backup job at that point? These are the things that worry me with Mostert. And then I don't think there's like that much. He's like a Tyler Algier type of pick, but like almost 10 years older, maybe 6 years older, but still, yeah. But I mean, it's not crazy. It's not crazy. It's a one that I have harder to take. I have a harder time taking. Rondé Gatson is like on my radar, not someone I'm really taking yet, but he's generating some positive buzz. One thing I would note out of the Chargers is that I'm seeing both Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman say positive things like exclusively about everyone. Like it's just like, this guy looks great. This guy looks great. And you can tell because at the end they're like, Jalen Reagor looks awesome. I'm like, okay. Okay. I see what you're doing. So it's getting to the point where I'm starting to take the Charger stuff with like a little bit of a grain of salt, except with Amari and Hampton, because it makes me feel good because I want to bet on him. But other than that, I'm taking it all with a grain of salt. Hunter Henry is a tight end 2 here, looks good. Josh Palmer, Wan'Dale Robinson, Mike Gesicki. These are kind of our depth, our cheap depth, right? I'm not going to pay for depth. You're not going to make me pay more than I need to for depth. I'll get it later. What can I get later? I can get some cheap receiver depth with Josh Palmer, with Pat Bryant. Let's see, where's Pat Bryant go? He goes 182. And I'm going to pick again at 192. I think it's more fun. This is one I am going to IKB. Actually, we'll go with the Sidekick there as my wide receiver 4. I should probably play it a little safer and go Palmer. Douglas, Robinson, Tillman. We also have Vele, Franklin. We have guys we can get at the end to do like the true backdoor stack on Knicks. This is more about, correct, because my brain goes to the stacking. What if I have a quarterback who's not stacked? That's a bummer. But the Sims are thinking more about who makes more sense as your wide receiver 4. The ranges of outcomes on these guys. And Pat Bryant might be nothing, which is a real problem if you only have 3 other receivers. So it's not that stacking doesn't matter. It's that it's not the only thing that matters. Pat Bryant, of course, does go, which is a bummer. But Troy Franklin's been getting some buzz. I'm excited to take. more of him. This comment had me saying the wrong thing. With DK being 20 rounds, is there ever a reason not to draft 3 quarterbacks? I mean, it's certainly very, very viable. I don't think you have to force it in every draft, but it's a nice use of a low value roster spot, right? Like a $1 pick. You get a guy who's very likely to score points. Bully the sidekick button. Yeah, we're kind of torn on what he means. Artillery Frost means that we're torn on whether or not to have a button that basically allows you to like give me new sims, give me a new sampling of the total sims, which would help in some ways for you to kind of see like, oh, how close are these guys? But in some cases, it might just be like, I'm going to just click this button until I see who I want to see, which is how I would use it probably. So we're kind of torn on whether or not to do it, but we might. All right. Comments on this is what I want. I wanted to find these comments on the coaches. All right. Dan Campbell, the clear 101. I don't think so. That's not who I think the 101 is. Vrabel played literally both sides of the ball. So 101. Also not who I think the 101, but I think those two are the clear 102, 103, somewhere there. D'Amico Ryans, I think, is the 101. He's 40. He's 40 years old. He's like 9 years younger than Vrabel and Campbell. So I think he's the 101. But I get the arguments for Vrabel and Campbell. To me, it's Ryans and then probably Campbell and then probably Vrabel, but it might be those two are like tier 2 to me. I think D'Amico's like number 1 with a bullet. Dan Campbell 101. Dan Campbell due to positional scarcity. See, the thing is though, he's not your tight end. I think Dan Campbell plays tackle. You need the size, man. You gotta be. There's just not that many coaches with size. Bunch of little Mike McDaniels running around out there, you know. All right, Calvin Austin, like a kind of awesome pick for this team, like truly. And then we'll see. Rodgers might come along as a quarterback 3 on this team. Cade Otton makes a ton of sense as the 3rd tight end. So this is a Hunter Henry team with who was the tight end one? Oh, Kraft, right. So this was always going to be a 3 tight end build. And Cade Otton, kind of the last of a tier or sort of his own tier maybe, makes a ton of sense. Now we're going to see guys like Yoshivas, Coker, Wicks. Receivers getting a little bit thinned out for sure. I only have 5 of them. Going to be playing running back in the flex primarily. And maybe even get a couple tight end spike weeks out of it, but still need to fill out that receiver depth. Doing our best to do that. At some point, I'll probably IKB to Troy Franklin because he's my boy. All right. Let's see. Appreciate it. Appreciate the love. I've been enjoying these. I've been enjoying the solo streams. It seems like a great year to go back to 0 running back because fewer will be doing it because they got burned last year. I think there's some truth in that. And also you have people like me who've been big proponents of 0 running back in the past being like, yeah, maybe not as much 0 running back this year. So the types of drafters you're competing with to do 0 running back who, if you're watching this, maybe you like similar types of players. Maybe you've got those types of players, but in the right combination that I don't because I didn't do enough 0 running back. Wouldn't that be a shame for me? Do you have a guy with the last guy you're comfortable with is your first running back? I don't think it has to be the Chuba tier. I think you could push it past the Chuba tier. I think it's probably in the Pollard, Swift, Jones, Caleb Johnson, a falling Judkins kind of tier would be where I'm normally wanting to have my first running back. I probably will get weird at some points and just take like an extreme strategy where I do like, Scattaboo, maybe grab ETN and Tootin. I kind of want to do that. I think the Sims would probably be like, what are you doing, man? You don't got to do this. The prices don't make you do that. You don't have to do it, man. But I want to, and I probably will. But but just kind of to mix in, you know. But I would say generally, once you get to like in a lot of rooms, once you're in sort of round 5, there's usually something where it's like the opportunity cost isn't really that high. So why not just take this running back and you'll end up just having kind of a safer route. Um, but yeah, I don't think there's like a definitive line where you like have to have a running back by. Yeah, Dan Campbell, D'Amico Ryans, Mike Vrabel is the top 3. I think it's pretty clear. Someone said Kellen Moore. The one thing that I was surprised about is, and maybe I shouldn't have been, but when you actually went through, I looked and I was so prepared. I'm so bummed that Google went down. Literally, Google goes down, and we can't do ship chasing. Um, it's like kind of surprising how many coaches were former quarterbacks, and so quarterback becomes, and right, we're drafting all the coaches. So like, what are you going to use Sean Payton for? Well, one thing is you could make him your quarterback. All right, so these dudes are all the same. I'm going to take Vele and Franklin and just get that done. Franklin goes so late, no one will take him. So let's take Vele and um, let's see. It's gonna. Oh, this one's Theo as a tight end 4. I'm just gonna take Franklin. Get that stack in there, and then we'll see. We'll see the final recommendation. But yeah, at the end of the draft, like I said the last time, we're getting to where the differences between these guys in kind of any system is going to be small, and I'm going to have a little fun there at the IKBs. But the structure is really what I wanted to show, just by basically following the top recommendation along the way, what we were going to get to structurally. And that's pretty much the same. It would have had me take a 4th tight end. It still might recommend that. That's fine. You have Kraft, Henry, and Otten. So in a 20-round format, you could go 3, you could go 4. But again, a similar build to the underdog draft. You get the 3 receivers and then use that to get some flexibility and actually hammer running back and go functionally as your running back build, but with more depth, and then tack on receivers as depth. So the receiver choices, I end up going with the 2 Broncos, but what was it? It was it Ray? And Parker Washington, where it was near the top. Tutu was near the top. You can also see it's bouncing around a little bit more as we get to the end because there's not that big of a difference between these guys. So yeah, IK being to those, but structurally you're seeing pretty much exactly the top recommendation all the way through. It's a build that is reminiscent of builds that I would do, not exactly the build that I would typically do, but one that I do stand behind. You get the 3 receivers up top, and then you kind of get the what do you call it? It's like a sandwich build, wide receiver sandwich, or I guess the running backs are really a sandwich, right? 'Cause the meat of the sandwich is the running backs, but you don't name the sandwich after the bread. You name it what's in the middle. But it doesn't really get the point across if I call it a running back sandwich, does it? So I don't know. Tell me what to call this. Can you tell me I'm at the 8? Did I recover all right from here? Running back. Let's look at it. Let's look at David's team from the 8. You're here? Am I losing my mind? This is the 12th. 11, 10, 9, 8. Okay. Well, you didn't do hero running back, did you? Did I recover all right from hero RB? I don't know. I don't. Are you barbell wide receiver? Yeah. Barbell wide receiver. Thanos build. Perfectly balanced as all things should be. Oh, I'm almost on the clock again to close it out. Parker Washington, Jordan James, Nick Westbrook-Akine. Yeah, we're kind of to like, you know what I might do? I'm going to take Elijah Moore. Another kind of little dart throw IKB. Get a little weird here at the very end. But Elijah Moore, I saw this morning with a little bit of love. Playing with Josh Allen. Probably nothing, but so is probably everyone right here. So let's just take Elijah Moore, kind of a fun guy. A little bit further down, just a note on kind of how I usually draft the Sidekick is that if I'm like IKBing to someone that's at the top of the list or very close to the top of the list, to me, that's like kind of the point. Like there's a reason that this tool shows you more than one player. We're trying to show you the picks that we think are good. There's more than one good pick at every point in the draft. Oh, at the 7. Okay. I'm glad I didn't review some random guy's team, or random gal's team, but thank you for pointing that out. Let's stay here so we can look at your team. All right. So you did McCaffrey, AJ Brown, Lamar. There's been the discussion about the elite quarterbacks, like which side are they more valuable on? I think they're actually more valuable on DraftKings because the bonuses, they separate more. A big DraftKings, and just having played on DraftKings, and like you get that like those like reps of you like see it happening and the stuff starts to click. You internalize kind of the lessons of the format by having the experience of going through some of the tournaments. On DraftKings, you're like, oh, I just need like the guys. Actually, more than on Underdog. Like you need the dudes who went off, and that's true at quarterback too. So, little tangent there, but I like the elite quarterbacks even more on DraftKings. Kittle, awesome pick, super underpriced. Waddle, Jennings, Pearsall. So you get the McCaffrey, Jennings, Pearsall. Then you wrap it up with Purdy, get that stack. That's pretty sick. Oh, and Kittle. Okay, so you got a big old 49ers bet. That's cool. Robinson is your running back 2. And then Coleman, and rip it in with Pearsall, Algier, Bigsby, Hunter. So my feedback would be, I think actually like Coleman should probably have been like an ETN or a Tootin, or a Stevenson. Like that's the pick because you had Brown, Waddle, Jennings, Pearsall. I'm just not that into Coleman, is what it is. But I probably go running back there, and then one of these running backs is maybe like likely is a Kyle Williams or maybe Spears is probably what I would have taken too. Maybe Bigsby is a Leggett, or not a Leggett, a Dobbs. That's probably like a Dobbs ETN versus a Coleman Bigsby. I'm taking the Dobbs ETN side of that. And that's the take, kind of partly informed by drafting the Sims, where they're just like, you don't have to like fully punt that running back production in the RB2 spot. But McCaffrey is the dude, like he's holding down. If McCaffrey's McCaffrey, like he's holding down the RB1. So I think Coleman's fine. It's just part of it is that I'm not that into Coleman. All right. I feel like it's hard to build super teams with the Sims. I keep seeing these teams with such low wide receiver depth. I thought we wanted to bet on uncertainty in the late rounds to hit on the 0.001% outcome and win. What I would say is like this is a format where you're trying to get through 2 separate single week elimination weeks and then score the most points in the final. And so I don't think it's like shocking that they're pointing us towards a little bit more of like, hey, be strong at every position. I get what you're saying. Like, this is kind of in line with my own thinking, is like, let's kind of push things at running back, hope to get some of that contingency, have that hit, and now we have this absolute super team. But I also think that given these prices, it is viable to go the other way and say, let me attack running back in some of these middle rounds, and then I'm going to have strength at receiver up top, but it's that depth that I'm not going to force when it's not there, and I'm going to get that later when other people are chasing zeros, when other people are chasing guys that are actually not going to play much, and I'll get, a Wandale Robinson or a Romeo Dobbs or a Demario Douglas, someone who's not super sexy and exciting, but helps fill my flex. The team that I had that won, it had Hunter Renfrow, it had Tyler Lockett. I actually had only 2 wide receivers through 5 rounds on that team, because I was a running back start. Then I grabbed DJ Moore and Chris Godwin and George Kittle, and my wide receiver depth was like a little thin, you know, compared to how I normally build. You can still have a really good team by just being strong at every position. Wide receiver is one of the safest ways to build, I think. Being strong at wide receiver is one of the safest ways to build, but it's not the only way to build. Yeah, there's multiple avenues is the shorter way to put it. Yeah, and there's also the draft like you're right element and leaning into the wide receivers. Like you have the nuts with these 3 receivers. But I don't want to, like, the sim teams, these 2 teams were pretty let's do another. I'll tell you what. Let's do one more. I have time for one more. We'll do one more in DraftKings. Best ball. It's not like only this. This isn't the only type of build you'll see. And so we'll see. Because I said that, now I'm sure this build will be similar, but it's unlocking. The way I'm looking at it is it's unlocking some stuff that I wouldn't really do and saying, hey, you can do this too. Do you have to do this? No. Can you build like you were building before? Like, yeah. I mean, the Swift pick, right? That I did, the Olave's right there. Olave's like really just as good of a pick. It's about how you want to build. I followed the top recommendation, and sometimes I won't. Sometimes I would just take Olave. I think both are totally valid. Can the Sims recommend handcuff or Bigsby way earlier than ADP because it sims an injury or surprising backfield outcome? For example, predicting last year Bucky Dowdle Brown breakout. We have these are built on ranges of outcomes. So in some seasons, Bigsby is the truth, or Dowdle, Algier, like these guys are crushing. So yeah, I mean that's like you will sometimes see those guys flip other guys, and sometimes you won't. It depends a bit on kind of the natural variance built into this tool is that you're not always seeing exactly the same set of sims that everyone else is seeing, which is there's always been randomness built into the Sidekick to try to just make sure our portfolios are balanced and that these picks that we think are pretty close to one another, you're not just taking the same guy every time. You're not tie breaking to like, we like this guy slightly more, so take him every time, right? That's not a great way to build. This allows us to create some of that variance, but with like more accurately, like more true to what we think, because you're still seeing seasons that we think are very realistic. You just might be seeing like a slightly different sample than someone else, and your sample might be slightly better in terms of that particular player. So yes, I mean that's how like a lot of these rookies, we have them. Like we think that they have wide ranges of outcomes, but they also those seasons include really strong league winning type of seasons. One of the benefits is Sims just giving you the idea to make the uncomfortable pick. Yeah, that's a big benefit. I think it's helping you think outside the box. And like I really, I think for some people it's like, hey man, like let me see if you just take the top guy, like what would it do? So that's what I'm trying to do right now. But I really think it's fun to not always take the top guy and to, experiment. All right, running back in round 1. So we are gonna be different here because we're not gonna have a wide receiver start for the first time, and that should make things a little more interesting. We're gonna see more wide receiver in the mid rounds probably. Depends. It depends on what falls, but this sets us up more likely to see some of those dudes like, um, a Ridley, Debo, Jennings, Godwin, Judy, those guys. More likely to be building through them than when you already have 3 strong receivers. I think I might just be too rookie pilled. I'm seeing more olds than I draft, and I hadn't seen it build to the upside wide receivers through several drafts instead of for the running backs in 4 through 5. Yeah, it's not always going to attack that pocket in round 7 through 9 because of the running backs available. It will sometimes though. I've been drafting a bunch. I've got plenty of burden. I've got a bunch of, Harris, Higgins. So it's not I mean, this is one of the big advantages. It's not like locked into anything specific. In theory, if you can accurately predict week 1 through 14 results and the week 1 through 14 reward is high enough, winning I disagree with this idea is that because I think we actually although we cannot predict like what's going to happen in individual weeks, we can identify the types of players who are more likely to be peaking at the end of the season and make sure we have enough of that firepower. And stacking helps there too. There's levers that we can pull to help maximize the end of season upside. And I like to pull those levers. Yeah, Sack has 38% of Wandale. That's fair. That's a fair criticism. I think Sack's been slamming volume in a small window. I would be surprised if he ended the season with that high of Wandale. What we're seeing is like, if there's a guy in a spot who helps with a specific type of build, you're going to be funneled to that guy like more than you might think, given that it's Wandale. But there's other sort of guys who are like also kind of Wandale, like a Palmer and a Dobbs and Douglas now a little bit. And then I also think that like I was saying, I think the types of builds that are going to be the most common will actually shift as time goes on and the macro kind of changes a little bit. A big factor is the rankings. What type of players available at each round? If you're round 4 through 5 position as a ton of wide receivers, you love them. Yeah, that is a huge factor. Understanding what is available now versus what is available later. And Sims range of outcomes are driven by leg ups. So that's, our inputs are having a big effect there. Rashee Rice, wide receiver 1. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Love that. Jacobs, Bucky, Wilson, Brown, Higgins, one of those guys going to be the top guy, and pretty excited about all of them. Higgins has a bye week overlap with Rice, I suppose. Higgins it's week 10. So that might be hurting him slightly. That's one thing the Sims can help us with as well. It's like that's something like so in the weeds. We did not have like a bye week penalty for same team for receiver in the Sidekick, but the Sims help put these seasons together. Well, the seasons have the bye weeks in them, and so that's like another little small thing that gets factored in. I wanted Wilson, man. I really wanted Wilson. All right, let's take Chase Brown. Pretty good pick. Chase Brown's been getting some love. I think it was Zach Taylor was talking about like how he kind of forced their hand and made them use him more than they wanted to, which is nice. Sims view drafts very holistically. That's true. Burden news hasn't been great. Yeah, the soft tissue injury. I don't know that. Sometimes it's like the news is like there hasn't been news, and so we're just like repeating news that already occurred and treating it like it's more news than it is. The news is that he had a soft tissue injury and hasn't really done anything yet, but he will be back for training camp. And then the new news was that Ben Johnson kind of threw a little bit of a hissy fit about players being hurt because Loveland and Burden are missing time, and he doesn't like that. But I don't know that that's any like additional piece of like actionable info. And so I am taking the discount on Burden. I agree with you that hopefully he gets cheaper. Pop Douglas, a good pick on DK. I very much agree. Yeah, this is interesting too. Is that if you happen to be in a draft with people who are using the Sidekick, it's like the variety of team structures is actually pretty interesting. It's not like everyone's like, oh, look at like he's, you know, wide receiver 3 in the 5th, and then you didn't get one till the 13th. That's a Sidekick. Like, no, nope. Like Zach has some teams, and maybe even that team where he had like 7 receivers through 9, something like that. Which player's been on the most BBM winning teams? Kittle? I think it might be Kittle. That's a good question, though. Kittle's such a smash this year, too. Chase Brown with Ladd, Nico, and Kittle felt so good. Ladd, Nico, like you could have stopped there. And then Kittle, Chase Brown on top. Hell yeah. Gesicki was on 3 BBM. Yeah, he was on mine. But so was Kittle. God, Gesicki was such a funny one. 38% Wandale feels okay until you see Russell Wilson refusing to check down to launch another incomplete moonball to Hyatt. That's true. I might need to revisit the ranking there. Loveland would be more concerning than Burden. Loveland's going to miss a bunch of time in training camp, it looks like. So if that's a concern for you, factor that in now. And I would say generally, we should all be mindful of the fact that Loveland's price might drop because he's going to miss some time. It sounds like he's been slated to miss time basically since the draft, it sounded like. I see Chase Brown go in the late 2nd and late 3rd, one of the widest ranges of ADPs. It's a good point. I don't have like a big bag of him, and I'm like less excited about him than Brees. But if there's a Kerrane from last year, you could argue it's Kerrane because he's going in the same spot as last year. But I think it's maybe more Chase Brown, where it's like there's not really. It seems like Taj Brooks is the running back too, not Zach Moss. Maybe worse because Taj is an unknown, but it's still not bad. They still didn't really address running back. All right, so we're now looking at receiver. Receiver is clearly going to be the pick here. We have 2 running backs through 3, and we can go with the Barkley correlation. Excuse me. Go with the Barkley correlation. Go with Hunter. Hunter over Worthy. Interesting. With Rice. You could do either. Let's stick with it. I might do Worthy and try to push Hunter. Hunter has the later ADP. This is an IKB for the purposes of trying to get both. But we'll see. Because we're going to get the Hurts, Devontae. Oh. All right. So he went. Oh. Hunter goes. We're going to put like Sutton or Hampton. Sutton it is. Whatever. Worthy double potential for Mahomes is pretty fun. Hunter, obviously, a good pick as well. But yeah, Worthy was the ADP faller, so I could be to him, same position. So structurally, following what the Sidekick had recommended. Chase. All right. Chase, Amon-Ra, Mostert, Kittle, Gesicki are all on 2 BBM owners, at least off the top of my head. Yeah. Okay. Perine RB2 maybe. Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned Perine. Perine kind of is the RB2, but I think in a pass catching way, which is probably pretty good for him. Like he gets the old RB2 from a couple years ago, who's kind of fallen off since. Um, I don't know. It's setting up pretty well for him to get volume. So looking at what's likely to come, we're seeing like pretty balanced recommendations, right? Wide receiver and running back here. So we've gotten 3 receivers through 5, not as strong at receiver as running back, but the value's a little more at running back. Nothing crazy, but it's like leans running back. But you can see like Travion Henderson behind, Debo, Jacoby, Olave. That doesn't happen with the start that I had previously. That's driven by the fact that we're already strong at running back here. Mahomes obviously popping up because of the Worthy Rice combo, and the bring back. Got the bow and arrow. Bow and arrow was our mnemonic there, and with the Week 17 bring back and the double, Mahomes looks like a great pick. Mahomes is got an ADP of 70 here, so he's right at my next pick. Would make a ton of sense. Potentially the point that I could IKB to it, but we'll see. Right now, there's some good picks. I mean, Mixon in the 6th, that's pretty good. Jennings, Godwin, Walker, Connor, Addison. These are all strong 6th round picks. Addison would probably be where I'd start to consider Mahomes. But any of these other guys fall, and I'm just taking them. And we also have the other thing with Mahomes is that both these guys have quarterbacks. So even if none of these guys fall and Mahomes is top, I might, we'll see. If I feel like there's a reason to, we could try to play this turn here. And my mouse got huge there. If I just wiggle this, did the mouse get huge? Yeah, this could be a spot where I push quarterback. Yeah, no one else has the stack, and they both have quarterbacks. Perine taking long down a distance. The question is, how much does Brooks Moss mix in on first and second? I don't think much. I agree. It's kind of Dare Agumbawale-esque here with Perine. I mean, Perine was on the Chiefs last year in a role that has typically been very valuable and just was not valuable. I think it might be over. It's a setting to help you find the cursor. Thank you, Matthew. That's hilarious. Can't push Mahomes past 75. Not on DK. Yeah. DraftKings, like I said, things can get ugly at quarterback fast. So it's dangerous. It's definitely more dangerous to push. But we do have, okay. Yeah, Addison goes. So literally everyone ahead, although it's got Jacoby Myers here. I think I'm torn. You guys vote. Vote in the chat. What should I do? Yeah, IKB means I know better or I know ball. No, just take Mahomes. All right, Mahomes. I tend to, like in a tiebreak situation on DraftKings, I'm going to tend to take the quarterback because even I could have played the room here. People get weird, man. People get weird on DraftKings at quarterback. So I like protecting myself, getting the double stack, getting the bring back. As Shady would put it, don't drop the baby is kind of one of Shady's sayings on this stuff, and I think a perfectly reasonable IKB there. But you can tell, right, as opposed to the previous builds, the receivers are much higher, much more of an emphasis on the receivers here with this build, not actually kind of punting this middle range in round 6. It wanted Myers in round 6. Reed kind of just as well. Pretty similar type of guy. I'm happy enough with the Mahomes Reed versus like a Myers. I don't know, like a Myers Swift maybe, or a Myers, maybe a Myers Reed. Happy to have Mahomes. All right. Reed, by the way, goes much later here, but 88. He's not coming back. My next pick's 94. So go ahead and grab him. And now we are starting to see some running backs pop back up, but not with like any kind of urgency. It's just that Swift and Pollard and Jones and Caleb would be pretty strong picks if they made it all the way back. But you're also seeing some receivers in the mix here too. Pacheco, Kelsey, right? The correlation starting to come in. So this is a pretty different build. I already have 4 receivers. We don't always have to punt receiver 3. It's that you want to be strong. You want to take the value where it is, and you also want to build a team that is coherent. And here we've got these 2 running backs up top. And so receiver is actually the spot where it's like, hey, if you're going to give me receiver value of any kind in these middle rounds, I'm going to take advantage. Now we're back to a receiver. Second on the recommendation list, Kelsey's third. And then four more receivers. How much stacking is too much? Should you max out at 2 pass catchers? I think it depends. It depends a little bit for me as I'm thinking through sometimes on like the team. You know, like if you're not that you would do this, but if you were stacking like Justin Fields with, you know, Alan Lazard, Malachi Corley, Mason Taylor, it's like, what's the point? Like the way he wins is going to be like feeding Garrett Wilson and running. But like Jordan Love is a guy where I've taken, you know, you can do stuff like Kraft plus Reed plus Golden plus Dobbs, and maybe even like a Jacobs in there, Marshawn Lloyd in there. Like I think that's viable because of the type of offense that it is. It's spread out. He's primarily a pocket passer. They utilize a lot of different players, and you're betting on this offense being awesome and then needing it to be awesome over the course of several weeks. So having a bunch of pieces is kind of interesting to me. Yeah. Zach points out the quote about Moss was that he was like, yeah, we'll see what we get. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Not great for Moss. Downs goes. Downs is such a good pick, man. And then Golden goes. That's a bummer. All right, so Cooper Kupp, Pittman, Ibuka, all these dudes, very solid. Here we're seeing Kupp and Pittman as the top, and it's a team where Rice is the wide receiver 1, Worthy's the wide receiver 2 in round 4, Sutton's the wide receiver 3, Reed wide receiver 4, not until round 7. So a Kupp and a Pittman both make sense. They're not as fun, but this is kind of a chaperone type of thing happening here, because it's actually like, hey, receiver depth is more important because you're not as strong up top. Cooper Kupp's also like 15 picks almost past ADP. It's the right type of team, I think, to draft Cooper Kupp on. You're looking for receiver depth. Is it as fun as a Mekabuka? No. Mekabuka's been getting love at camp, but so is Tez Johnson and Jalen McMillan for some reason. So who knows? But this is now 5 receivers through 8 rounds. So I'm glad I did another one here, because you can see this is not actually that similar to the last build at all. And the only IKB here was to Worthy over Hunter, so same position, and Mahomes, trying to make sure I lock up that quarterback, where he would have certainly been the top recommendation here over Reed had he come back. Evan Ingram is a bring back. Ibuka's still here, but we're now looking at tight end. Sure, let's do it. Ibuka, I think, a totally fine pick. Nix, you could have done as a quarterback too. Yep. Ibuka, great. Any of these picks. And this, again, this is why this tool works like this. Any of those guys would have been really good picks. This is not a, you only got to do this pick, but I think it is interesting to see what happens when you do. I like this team so much more than last. It's more comfortable, right? It's more like in line with what we typically do. This is a build. Everyone knows this, right? I get a couple running backs. I use that. I don't need to worry about running back anymore. I'm going to build out receiver depth, get a Mahomes double stack, get a bring back, get 2 bringbacks actually in Ingram and Sutton. I've got that game stacked up. This is classic stuff. This is the stuff we do. It's not the only way to go, but it's fun and it's viable, and it is in the mix if you just follow the top recommendation. So that's something that Shady has talked to me about as well. It's like, you know, ball guy, fantasy guy me versus math guy Shady, and it's like the point isn't that we're going to find a bunch of stuff that's bad now. Hey, all that stuff you did, bad. That's not the point, and unlikely. Instead, it's more about, hey, there's other stuff that's actually good that you can use too. But it's fun. It's always fun to do the stuff that we like. I think I see CD, if fully healthy, can see 200 target season and easily be the wide receiver 1. Yeah, I mean, CD's a smash. I don't know if Michael Pittman around 8 or 9 is pretty fun to me. Clint, I got to tell you, it's kind of fun to me. and I don't like Michael Pittman. He was one of my biggest fades all of last year because he was in the 3rd round, I think. I was like, this dude's at best a 5th round pick, more like a 6th. But if you're a 6th round pick and then you go on the 8th, cool. Especially if it allows you to do other stuff. Like in this case, you take 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, and then you're not weak at receiver. I don't have Pittman here, but I would have if Cup was gone. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't like Pittman, and he's a pretty good pick. That's one of the things for me in best ball, and I think different than redraft. In redraft, I think still I'm just like, I'm getting my guys. In best ball, I'm more price sensitive. I'm more thinking about what does this guy have to pay off? Like where should he be going? Where is he going? How big can he pay off this price tag, even if I don't love the archetype or the player? It's like a guy that I wouldn't pay. There's some guys where you're like, I would draft this dude if he was 5 rounds more expensive. But if you're only taking those guys in best ball, I think you might be trying to hit too many home runs on the same team. And in best ball, we're trying to stack a bunch of wins in an 18 round or 20 round card, and finding guys who are just like 2 or 3 rounds underpriced that aren't like the sexiest names can be a pretty helpful way to do that. So yeah, it's different for me than redraft. Like in Pittman, I'm not taking in redraft. I'm still not doing it. But I think he's a great best ball pick. Padless, I bet padless practice for Tess Johnson looks like prime Antonio Brown. I'm with you, man. Padless practice. I mean, he like dominated the Senior Bowl. If he had sat out the combine and just done the Senior Bowl, I wonder if he'd be like a 2nd round pick. All right, Luther Burden pops to the top here, over Tootin, and Burden goes like mega late here, 134. Where's Tootin go? Tootin is 130, so there's no point to IKB it because they're both so late. So I'll just do that. All right. Okay, this is something that I've noticed with if you're just looking at the recommendations here, is that the Tootin / Burden pick is kind of like you can get your running back 3, or you can get your wide receiver 6. Both are good picks, but it doesn't matter too much. Like whatever you want to do, kind of do it. But then you're like, oh, so the next pick will be Tootin. But then the quarter, it's like, no. That was your that was your that was your skill position pick. How you want to kind of try to build out what's happening in the flex. Do you want to solidify the wide receiver depth or get that running back 3? But then it's time to take care of quarterback. Quarterback 2 is what we're focused on now. It's just an interesting thing that I've noticed pop up and I think is right. Like I didn't like think of that as a luxury pick exactly, but it kind of was because now it's time to get back on the track and take care of the structure, which on DraftKings especially, I think, is don't get locked out at quarterback, and a stacked Love with Jaden Reed is pretty nice. And we do have, some running back depth to be mindful of, but there's going to be other options. Plus, it's honestly not impossible that Tootin comes back, although I doubt it. We're picking at 142. He's like at 131, so he'll be gone probably. But, Cup fell 15 picks best ADP, so it could happen. And if not, we can live in this like Ray Davis, Javonte Williams, Austin Eckler. Did J.K. Dobbins already go? J.K. Dobbins might pop up here at some point. But yeah, kind of interesting. And I mean, this build really couldn't be more different now. Rice, Worthy, Sutton, Reed, Cup, Burden. We're putting the pressure on Barkley and Brown. And receiver is now what's hitting our flex here on this full PPR site. Makes sense. We get Evan Ingram as the bring back, Sutton. So we have this bet on the Broncos. But we also have a bet on the Packers through Reed and Love. And the Broncos bet serves as both a stack and a bring back on the Mahomes double stack. So it's a very fun team. I like this team a lot. I'm wondering what the actual metric the new update is sorting the players by. So yeah, there's a score that sorts the players, and it's driven by which sims you're seeing of the total sims. Are teams being simmed against the current draft room or synthetic? Yeah, there's not being simmed against. I was worried this was going to be shady stuff because it's fairly technical, but no, it is. I can answer this fully. It is not. It doesn't have anything to do with your draft room as far as what. I mean, how could it in a way? Because we're giving you the sims like in. It would take too long. This doesn't have any information about like your draft room. So if you think that like there's a couple like dead teams in your room or something like that, and you want to play a little less for advance rate, that's information that you would need to bring to the table. That's not in here at all. It doesn't have any information about your draft room other than the players that are available, and the players that are no longer available, and the players that are on your team. That's the information that has about the available player pool, the players that have been drafted, but not by which teams, and the teams and the players that you have drafted. So, yeah, that's important, and that's important to. You need to pay attention to runs and what the other players in the how other people are building and what players on the turns are doing, so that you can try to push stuff around the turns and all that stuff. You're bringing all that to the table yourself. That's a big part of what we're doing here. All right. So at once running back, Ray Davis, Austin Eckler, J.K. Dobbins. Of these, I think Dobbins is the least likely to come back, given his rise. I'm going to go ahead and just take Dobbins. This is a spot where it's like, a player's rising, and it's running back anyway. Just give me the guy who's rising. I'm not going to be anchored to. So this would be another kind of classic spot where I might IKB. It's like this guy's, going to be harder to get later, and as good a pick as these other guys in my mind. And honestly, the least likely to come back because of that rising element. So if I want both, I'll take him now. Although Strange comes to the top, and Roshan and Ray Davis. So these guys are all bouncing around a little bit. They're close to one another. I might do Ray Davis or Eckler, or Benson over Roshan because of ADP stuff. If it's the tight end, I'll just do the tight end. Okay, so Roshan's the top. My next pick is 166. I'm going to hold off on Roshan and try to get him later. Trey Benson is the top after him, so I will. Well, let me do Strange, actually. Sort of true to the sidekick would be Strange and try to push Roshan. So let's do that. So running back 3 is J.K. Dobbins, and then we're pushing running back 4 a bit. We have 2 tight ends, Ingram and Strange. And you see 2 running backs at the top here. Benson, Eckler. Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit more guys bouncing around because everyone's a little closer to one another. But hopefully still get Roshan. That was the play. I can get Roshan with my next pick. So hopefully I do. Ray Davis goes. Strange is a guy who's been getting consistent buzz. They do really seem to like him. So I like getting him. All right, let's review the team real quick. Barkley, Brown, running back 3, Dobbins. And use those middle rounds to build out the wide receiver depth, double stack the Chiefs, bring back Sutton, Reed, stacked with Love, Cup, Burden. So nice mix of upside and veteran production. And tight end looks strong. Quarterback looks strong. Putting stress on the running back depth, but Dobbins is a nice piece there. And so it should come out the gates actually pretty strong with Brown, Dobbins, and Barkley. Now just need to build out some depth. So it's pretty balanced and pretty good team, I think. Sorry for leaving this up forever. My takeaway from Bucks camp is Baker's got an elite O-line, even more weapons, and full-time Bucky, wheels up. Yeah, it's fair. He's a little more expensive than I like, but I get it. Yeah, check out the Discord. There's a stream that Sack and Shady did last night, answering questions from people using the beta. And if you want to use the beta, head over to the Discord as well. There's a spot to test it out for Sidekick subs. If Gritty is drafting in your room, how much this Sims prioritize getting quarterback? No more than usual. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to keep that in mind. Does the Sims factor in injury probability? Yes. Injuries are factored in, both in the sense that anyone can get injured and the sense that specific players have injuries that we are worried about. Yeah, the score is not exactly EV. This is actually a shady question, but it's like it's approximating something close to the EV of the team. Is I think a fair way to say it. Land the baby. Land the baby. You land the plane. What? Can you hear the baby in the background? Is that what you're saying? Roshan. I would like to hear more about Roshan. I haven't heard that much about him, but it feels like he's potentially a big hit this year, kind of in that Jamal Williams role. So let's get him. I said I was going to try to push Roshan and get him with the next pick, and I did. So let's take Roshan. That's pretty fun. Eckler, Pat Bryant, DeMario. Oh, Pat Bryant comes to the top, right? We got this whole thing going on with the Broncos and the Chiefs, so that's cool. So this is where we get potentially our 7th receiver, it looks like here. Now that we were to 4 running backs. The running back room is I mean, this is actually where I'm most comfortable, right? I'm like, I'm feeling strong at running back. I got 4, but they're all pretty solid picks. And one of them Saquon Barkley, so you're feeling good. And then Pat Bryant, bring back. Didn't get Pat Bryant on the Bo Nix team, but get him here. Pretty sweet. He's about half, his ADP is about halfway between this pick and my next pick. I doubt he would have come back, but I'm into it. Eckler jumps to the top. Now you're seeing Aaron Rodgers unstacked. You will see more of that than maybe certainly I would have assumed. So the unstacked quarterback 3, even an unstacked quarterback 2. This morning I did a team that had Jordan Love with Matthew Golden, and then Tucker Kraft, and then Romeo Dobbs. And it had Flowers and DeAndre Hopkins as bringbacks, but I did not have a quarterback 2, and I took Tua like 15 picks past ADP, and then I grabbed Rodgers with Jalen Warren, and I think Calvin. No, I think I got sniped on Calvin Austin, so I was just with Jalen Warren. So it's like, okay, I've got I never stacked Tua, so I've unstacked Tua, and I have Aaron Rodgers just with Jalen Warren. So that's like kind of, like, oh, it's not that fun. But Tua was a huge ADP value, which we know also matters. And I do have Rodgers with running back, so it's bet on the Steelers. And then I have this gigantic Week 17 stat, like where the stacking is going to matter the most, right? Is I'm betting on that game to go nuts with Flowers, Hopkins, Golden, Kraft, Dobbs, Love. So I have it covered, right? Like it's a specific bet. I don't have multiple outs, but I have this big game stack there. And this is similar. Here we have Mahomes, Worthy, Rice, Sutton, Ingram, Pat Bryant. If we were to take an unstacked Aaron Rodgers, if we were to take an unstacked Daniel Jones, Jackson Dart, is basically functionally a flyer, like hey, I'm taking an extra wide receiver, an extra tight end. Hopefully they'll hit my lineup sometime randomly. Why can't we play that game at quarterback? Sims think we can. Oh, so Shady jumped in to answer the question. So thinking of it as EV is correct. Yeah. Okay. So the score is essentially EV. Mixing land the plane with don't drop the baby. Land the baby. Thoughts on Roshan taking that Montgomery role for the Bears? Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to think about, right? It's very plausible to me, but I do worry a little bit about like not having heard that much about Roshan with the new staff. But he's big. He catches passes. He's good in short yardage. Swift is not. It all seems great. I also do think like Kyle Monangai could. I know Monangai is a plotter, but the role here we're talking about is kind of a plotter role, so it could work out. I'm betting on. I am betting on Roshan. It's one of those things where I'm kind of trying to keep my ear to the ground to make sure I don't get carried away. All right, so we talked about it. The quarterback 3, Jackson Dart. Why would we take Jackson Dart here? Because Jackson Dart is going to be starting by the end of the season. He could spike. He could fill a week. Unfortunately, Mahomes is now a pocket passer, basically. And Jordan Love is a pocket passer. Jackson Dart gets us through one of these weeks that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten through. And Jackson Dart is a much safer bet for points at the end of the season than a number of these other picks. And so you take him. This is one of the lessons of the Sims. It's like both kind of obvious and annoying. I find it annoying, but it also makes sense. We're just like, yeah, Jackson Dart. He's going to probably score points. You have 2 pocket passers. He could easily outscore one of them in a way that matters. He could also like fill in points during a bye week and get you through. Round 1 advance. Also, Miles Sanders is about as good a pick as the running back would have taken over Dart. So why not just grab him? You do need the Sims to tell you to take Miles Sanders because it's not a fun click, but we know he could be the starting running back for the Cowboys, as told to us by his head coach, and the fact that he's getting reps at the ones. All right, let's look at the team. Barkley, Brown, Dobbins, Roshan, Miles Sanders. Very, you know, we're getting our points at running back, right? This is like a stern father. This is the running back room of a stern father. We're getting points. I don't want anyone screwing around with rookies. Just getting points. But we have fun at receiver. We take Xavier Worthy. We stack up the Broncos and the Chiefs. Get Jaden Reed. He's fun. Cooper Kupp is Dad got his pick. Dad got his way there. Burden, one of the most fun picks in my opinion on DraftKings, and even earlier than you have to take him because he goes so late there sometimes. And then Pat Bryant. So we're having fun at receiver, just eating our vegetables at running back. Mm-hmm. All right. Sim not auto-populating the queue. I'm clicking the queue. I'm clicking this. I'm clicking these guys. All right. Yeah. It's not going in the queue. It's going in the queue because I've clicked them. All right. All right. Ziglieri went in and didn't mean. Yeah. Okay. Been drafting May because of you. Hunter Henry, Diggs, and May seem like money. Yeah. May is. He's just really good, man. He's really good at football. It's like hard to overstate how bad last year was. I bet on him last year, so I'm not, hand up on that, right? I bet on the Patriots last year. It didn't work. I didn't think it was going to be. It was hard for me to believe it was going to be as bad as it was. But I watched like every game of the Patriots, pretty much every snap, and horribly designed offense. Head coach who was like weirdly checked out, like benches Ramondre Stevenson and like forgets to relay that to his other coach, or just I don't know what happened. Right? It was a really awful situation for Drake May to be in. They didn't have weapons really. Not that their weapons are amazing this year, but they're certainly a lot better. And then the coaching. I mean, McDaniels is a gigantic upgrade as an OC. I know he's washed out twice as a head coach, but he's been a pretty good OC over the years. And then Vrabel is a much better kind of CEO type for them to have. So Slayton goes here, and we're looking at Theo Johnson stacked up, third tight end. Seems great. Let's do it. So we did get the stack, right? We took the unstacked Dart, get the Theo Johnson. Dart is one of the guys you can backstack a little bit with Slayton. Hyatt apparently has gained like 20 pounds or something insane. Maybe not quite that much. He's also like getting fed by Russell Wilson. So it's maybe like semi-nervous on Slayton, but I still think Slayton's a pretty solid pick. Rashard Smith here is fun, like really fun. I just talked about how it was a stern father running back room, but Dad's gone to bed. They left town. This is actually parents are gone for the weekend. This is their parents are gone for a long weekend, and you're like 17 years old. That's the Brashard Pitt. That's how excited I am about Brashard Smith on this team with Mahomes and with all these Broncos, and with not much else fun outside of like Saquon and Chase Brown, obviously. But the running back depth needed a little bit of life. Needed a little bit of fun. And ultimately could end in regret, much as some of the decisions I've made when my parents were out of town. Hyatt is on that Debo diet. Yeah. The Debo Keenan Allen similarities are. We need the Pequod's pizza. Daniel Raz, get on that. Yeah, Brashard Smith will be great when the other running backs go out for a pack of 6. Yeah, I think that's right. Unironically, like that's basically what's going to happen. By the end of the year, it'll be him. Amari Cooper. Oh man. Yeah, congrats to Steph, recent graduate, BCBA. That's awesome. 2772 build viable on DraftKings. I think so. Yeah, I mean, a lot of builds are DraftKings because of this is kind of true on Underdog. Is really true on DraftKings, where like what matters is not so much your builds, like this build in many ways is like a 4 running back build, because what I do past like I don't know round 16ish doesn't really matter. It matters a little bit. It makes sense that I took 2 dart throws at running back because I only had 4 running backs at that point. So I'm not saying like log off after round 16, but are different way. Like 7 running backs doesn't mean the same thing in every build. And because you have 20 rounds, a lot of different builds are viable. So yeah, 2772 is totally viable. What are we at here? Here we've got 3, 6, 7, 3. And this is functionally a luxury pick at the end here. Vele's popping up. That seems fine. I IKB that to Franklin. I do like Franklin's going late. I might check the DraftKings ranking on Franklin. Make sure he's popping. He's so late. He might be getting hurt by the low ADP. On this team especially, I would prefer Franklin to Vele because I think Vele and Pat Bryant are kind of competing for one job. Although I guess you could say you have that job locked up, but I think I'd rather just bet on one of the other guys. But Vele's at the top, so structurally it would be the receiver. And then Franklin. What's the latest? Franklin has had a good spring, extremely explosive, and about 5 pounds heavier. Yeah, I'll revisit the Franklin rate since I'm IKB into him. How often do you deviate from 8 receiver? I mean, I think I just did on the last one. These platforms should show more respect to Mike Tice for the timeout. Timeout, bros. I'm gonna take Franklin. He was one of my highest drafted players last year, and it's the same position as what the Sidekick is recommending. So staying within the structure. Sidekick recommended all the way throughout. Outside of IK being to Mahomes here, but that was more to lock up the quarterback on a site where quarterback can be a problem. All right, so this team's done. 3, 6, 8, 3. Barkley Brown, kind of the double hero build where you push the running back depth, get Dobbins and Roschon, Sanders and Smith to close it out. Very, very comfortable for me with this room. And then Rice, Worthy, Sutton, Reed, Cup, Burden. I'm glad we did this one because there's a lot of chat about, hey, where's the receiver depth? We have it here. And in part because it's Barkley and a Brown team. So it's like you need to score points at receiver and you don't have the elite firepower that the other 2 teams that I built before this had. So depth is more of a priority. So get that depth. We do have it. Pat Bryant. This is really fun too because it's a big team stack. Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, Rashard Smith, Cortland Sutton, Luther Burden, Evan Ingram. All bring backs with Patrick Mahomes. Don't have Knicks, but we have Love, we have Mahomes, we have Dart. So there's plenty of points at quarterback on this team. And if Bo Nix facilitates a huge week in week 17, pretty sure Patrick Mahomes, Xavier Worthy, and Rashee Rice are going to be pretty sweet to have in this 1,000+ person final. So that is that team. Thank you all for watching. I'll answer a couple things. Is the modeling taking into account ownership based on ADP? No, we're not doing the ownership of the players is not directly factored in. So that would be another thing to consider. I think in some ways that will be like at the end of the season when we have like clear-cut targets at running back, we're not going to be messing around in terms of like the upside that those players represent. So it's not like that's lost on us as something to consider, but there's nothing that specifically looks at the ownership of the players in the tournament. 3-6-8-3 is my go-to structure. Yeah, it's a pretty solid one. All right. That'll do it. Thank you for watching. This is a nice long stream here. Getting to kind of show off the beta of the Sims here and really sticking to the exact structure that it recommended, even if every pick wasn't the top recommendation, although most were. See you guys later. And yeah, we'll be back streaming next week. Have some articles out for you next week. Hopefully we'll do that ship chasing draft. I'm super excited about that. Have a great weekend. See you later.